In this video, we're going to show you how to install the front axle on your Hyundai Elantra located behind your front wheels. Using a 21mm socket, loosen and remove your lug nuts. Remove your wheel and set it aside. Now with the wheel removed, you now want to go ahead and remove our axle nut. This here has two little dimples on each side. They're dimpled to retain the nut to lock it into place. I'm going to use a punch, and you want to go ahead and open these up. Now with these little tabs opened up on both sides, you're going to use the 34mm socket and loosen that axle nut. Now here we have our flex hose coming around from the back side of our caliper, and it comes over to this bracket. It's bolted to the base of the strut. I'm going to use a 12mm socket and loosen and remove this bolt. I'm going to go ahead and throw that bolt back in the strut for now. Now on the back side of the strut here, we have our ABS wire, comes around and wraps around. We're going to go ahead and remove this 12mm bolt right here. I'm going to throw that bolt back in the strut. And then if we follow the wire up and around, it goes to a bracket up here, and that's held in place by a 10mm. We're going to go ahead and loosen and remove that one as well. And do the same here. Go ahead and throw that bolt back in place. Now I want to go ahead and make sure that our CV axle floats free inside of our wheel hub. And normally what you can do is just push on the center here. Well, ours is kind of stuck. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use a punch in the center here, and I'm going to use my hammer and hit that. You can see that it's moving. Now it has moved. You can go ahead and grab that axle from the back side, and you can see now it is moving. There we go. That's all we want. Just want to make sure that that CV axle is floating free inside that wheel hub. Now on the backside behind the axle, you're going to locate your outer tie rod end. Want to go ahead and loosen and remove this next. Now chances are you're going to have a cotter pin here. Want to go ahead and bend the tab out here, or the leg. Now in some cases you're going to find them that they have the two on here. And what I'm going to do is simply kind of straighten these out a little bit. And I'm going to try and remove this here. Now you can use regular pliers if you want. I'm just going to straighten these out. Now I'm using cutters here, and what I like to do is grab the head. Now these are one-time use, so you're going to have to source out a replacement cotter pin. And you pinch and rotate, or pinch and rock the cutters here. You can go ahead and remove the cotter pin. Now sometimes these are rotted or they'll break inside. Simply just break them off flush, and then we're going to go ahead and put our 17mm socket on this. Loosen and remove this. Now I'm going to go ahead and strike the knuckle here. That should go ahead and release the outer tie rod end. Next, we want to separate our knuckle from the strut itself. This is a 17mm here. I'm going to put my box end wrench, and the nut is a 19mm. Now I'm going to keep the bolt in there. Do the same here. I'm going to use my 17mm socket here and remove that bolt. Now you do want to take caution, and you want to prepare to have a securing strap ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and hang this off to the side here. When we undo this lower bolt here, chances are this knuckle is going to want to fall away. You want to pay attention to the flex hose as well as your ABS wire. You don't want those to pull. You want to have flexibility. That's why we unbolted everything. All right, ours was a little rusted there. There we go. All right, our unit is floating here a little bit. Let's go ahead and pull this out. Now I'm kind of leaning into the knuckle assembly, holding it in place. And this is going to start to drop down. All right, so our knuckle is going to separate from the strut. There we go, starting to separate from the strut. Now, if you want to, you can always put a pry bar down inside there. There we go, we just dropped out. This is where your securing strap is going to come in handy. Now this is just held on for precaution. You might find it easier to manipulate this here to get the axle out of the wheel hub and then secure it. Grab that axle, work that out from the back side, and pull that out. Then go ahead and secure that. Our knuckle is now supported and hanging safely. Our axle is now separated from the knuckle assembly. Let's now go ahead and remove it from the transaxle. The next part is to go ahead and separate our axle right here from the transmission. Now you can't get your pry bar in here. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna come underneath. There's a hole right here, and you're gonna use your pry bar, and you're gonna get between the axle and the transmission, and you're gonna pry out, and we're gonna pop that axle out of the transmission itself. All right, so you're gonna give it a quick little snap. There we go. The axle itself is now separated. Go ahead and get in there a little bit further here. Yeah, and it's pulling out. Now we do have a drip mat underneath the vehicle. Sometimes the transmission or transaxle will drip a little bit of fluid, so we do have a mat underneath to catch any of this fluid. We're going to come back to the outside of the knuckle area and pull this axle out. Now with the axle removed from the transmission or transaxle, you're going to pay attention to this seal right here, and you're going to look for any type of moisture around the aluminum body right here. Now if there is moisture down here, that tells us that our axle seal is leaking. Now's the time that you want to go ahead and replace this if you need to. Let's go ahead and get our new axle and get that ready to install. Go ahead and feed this in, and you are going to have to manipulate the CV part of this axle and fit it into the transmission. So you're gonna have to bend it. Good, line that up. And you're gonna rotate it to make sure that the splines line up. Now you wanna make sure that the axle itself is flush up against that seal. Now you can just reach around there and feel that. And ours seated Perfect. So now let's go ahead and install the outer portion of the axle. Now before installing our splines into our wheel hub, we do know that it was a little bit rusty and we had to whack it with the hammer a little bit there, or with a punch to go ahead and get that to loosen up. I'm just going to put a little bit of anti-seize on the splines here. Now we're going to go ahead and release our securing strap. That'll allow a little bit of mobility here. Good, work this into the wheel hub and then push this back up and in. Now we're going to go ahead and raise up our knuckle here and get our bolts installed. Now I went ahead and I cleaned up our bolts and I put some anti-seize compound on the bolt itself, or right on the smooth part of the bolt. And we're going to push or pull that strut to go ahead and get that lower bolt in. Now at this point, we'll go ahead and get the nut started. Now we can remove our securing strap. Go ahead and install the axle nut and snug that down. I'm going to go ahead and install our ABS. Good, line that bracket up. I just want to go ahead and snug these down. They don't have to be super tight, just want to make sure that they're good and snug. And go ahead and line this up. Go ahead and move our knuckle here to line this up. Now when installing this here, I want to pay attention to the hole in the ball joint stud here. And that's where our cotter pin is going to go through. And we want that to line up with the notch on our castle nut. So go ahead and install this here. Using a 17mm socket, I'm going to go ahead and tighten down the ball joint nut here. Let's go ahead and torque this down to 24 foot-pounds. Now our castle nut is blocking the hole for the cotter pin. So what we need to do is go ahead and tighten this down a little bit more. You never want to back off the nut. You will simply tighten down the nut until the notch opens up. Here we go. Take our cutters here. Go ahead and bend this over. I'm simply going to run it over this side here. I'm going to snip off a tiny bit of the excess and then snip off the tail. Go ahead and torque down your strut bolts here to 130 foot-pounds. Now we have our vehicle lowered down near the ground. I'm going to go ahead and crank this out a little bit. It's going to give us a better access angle to our spindle nut. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw on a couple lug nuts here. I'm going to rotate this. Now I'm going to take a large pry bar. I'm going to set this up just like so. Rotate that wheel, and that is going to act as leverage here. Let's go ahead and torque down our axle nut to 217 foot-pounds. Here it is. Move the pry bar and your lug nuts. The next thing we want to do is you want to focus on these notches in the axle itself. Now we're going to go ahead and take a chisel or a punch, and we want to go ahead and dimple the crown right here on both sides to go ahead and keep that nut from spinning off. At this point here, we can go ahead and install our wheel. Go ahead and grab your wheel. Go ahead and line that up. I want to go ahead and get all of our lug nuts started by hand first, and then once we get them all started, we're going to come back and snug them all down. Go ahead and torque down your lug nuts to 85 foot-pounds. You preferably want to do this in a crisscross pattern. You're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.